Hey everyone, welcome to the investor.bet NRL Round 7 betting trends preview. My name is Reese, and in this video I'm going to go through all 8 games coming up this weekend in the NRL. It's a spread out round from starting on Thursday night through to Monday, but we have a full slate, 8 games, all teams bar the Cowboys in action. We're going to look at the betting history between these two sides in each matchup and who's been winning, who's been covering the spread, what have the odds been in their previous matches, and also the totals. Have their games been going over or under the total in their previous meetings, what those totals have been. And we'll look at their history so far this season. Have their recent games been going over or under? Have they been covering all that information? And I'm going to go through my early thoughts, who I think is going to win in each game, and what I think is going to happen as to what I'm looking at betting later in the week. If you want to follow all my final bets, the link is in the description to the NRL membership. That's where you also get access to all the bet finder tools for the NRL to study the teams and the statistics and the try scorers, which we're going to talk about in the following video. First game, Thursday night, the Seagulls versus Dragons. Manly back at home at Brookvale, where they're 3-1 so far this season. The only loss was against the Melbourne Storm, but they're coming off back-to-back defeats. They're favourites here though, $1.60, minus 3.5, and the total is 46.5 points. Against the Dragons, the previous 4 meetings between these two sides have all gone under the total points line. Manly come into this matchup, 2 of their past 3 games going under against the Eels and Sharks, but they are 4-2 to the overall on the season. Dragons, though, are pretty big underside. 3 of their last 4 have gone under. The matchup last week where they scored 38 against the Titans did go over the total. One big thing to keep in mind for this game is Manly are returning from Perth, having played on Saturday. Dragons played the Titans at home on the Friday night, so they not only have gotten to stay in Sydney, but they've also got 1 extra day's rest coming into this matchup. So it's definitely a tricky spot for Manly. I do agree they are favourites, but I do think they're a little bit short. The home team has a very good record in this matchup, winning 10 of the past 11, and they've covered the past 8 straight. The past 6 meetings have gone 3-3 each side, but Dragons have covered 5 of the past 7 versus Seagulls. They met twice last season. Dragons won the home game 20-12 in round 4. Seagulls won the game at this venue 30-14 in round 15. There was a total of 50.5. We've got a 46.5 number this time around, so 4 points lower than the last meeting. So that right there is where you can see the bookmakers looking to adjust. This matchup has a history of going under. The sides have started to go under more often recently, so we've got a lower total to contend with. I would lean towards the under from this matchup perspective. One thing, looking at how these sides match up, intact, they're very even. There's not a great deal between them at all. And defensively, the Dragons have been the slightly better defensive side so far this season. For me personally, I have them ranked 5th in the defense ratings, where the Seagulls are ranked 14th overall. I expect this to probably be a pretty close game with only a few points separating the two sides. Agree Manly should be favourites at home, but I think they're just a touch too short at this stage. The one thing I will say, I wanted to mention this off the top of the video, is that even though the games are spread out this weekend, they go from the Thursday through to the Monday, that definitely doesn't mean you need to bet in every game. Sometimes there's games on at very similar times, or they start immediately one after the other. So you can miss games, or you can decide to not bet into games, and you can still have other bets on that day. The biggest advantage you guys have over the betting companies is that we don't need to bet into every single game, or to bet multiple bets on a single game especially. The betting companies, they have to set odds on every matchup. We just get to pick and choose when we bet. So if you apply that principle and really go through, pick your spots where you feel like there are really good betting opportunities, you'll win a higher percentage of bets and therefore make more money. You might have less bets overall, but if you're winning at a higher percentage and you're starting to cut out those bets where you're just putting it on because you're going to watch that game, or because that game's about to start and it feels worthwhile having a bet on it, then it'll go a long way towards actually profiting with your bets. Not just on the NRL, but anything else that you're betting on as well. That same principle applies. First game on Friday. This is early in the afternoon. Bulldogs off the bye, $1.30 favourites against the Rabbitohs, who are returning from Perth. They come into this matchup on a 6-day turnaround, having played the Saturday late afternoon game against the Cowboys. They're coming off a loss in that game, but are 4-2 overall on the season. Bulldogs, as we know, undefeated on top of the ladder. 10.5 point favorites, 44.5 point total line in this game. So if we look at just the past 6 matchups between these two sides, 5 of them have gone over. It was just the game last season in round 4. The Rabbitohs won 20-16, which went under a 42.5 point line. But the 5 games prior to that all went over. But if we zoom out a little bit further, 8 of the past 13 head-to-head have gone under, which does match up a little bit with how these sides have played so far this season. All 6 of the Rabbitohs games this year have gone under the total. And the Bulldogs, their last 3 games prior to their bye, all went under against Eels, Sharks, and Knights. So there are quite a lot of signs pointing towards an under in this matchup. Bulldogs, the number 1 defensive side. Rabbitohs around mid-pack. They do definitely give up plenty of run meters, but their goal line defense is generally pretty good. The trends in this matchup definitely suggest the under, but at 44.5, I feel like it's really getting towards like the absolute minimum. And if you're backing the under here, it's going to get very, very close to that number. So I'm just a little bit hesitant on that. And we have seen games in recent seasons between these two sides that have had big shootouts, but it's not the way these sides are playing. I think Rabbitohs will struggle to score a touch though against this Bulldogs defense. They struggled last week with a very similar lineup that they have in this game when they were playing the Cowboys. The Cowboys, in comparison to the Bulldogs defensively, are worlds apart. I think off the top of my head, Cowboys rank around 13th in a majority, around that below average metric in majority of defensive metrics. So this is a lot tougher. Rabbitohs having the trip back. I think Bulldogs will get over the line and win. Don't really want to lay double digits though, so I'll be looking at other ways to play this game. Rabbitohs have a good record. They've won 6 of the past 7 versus the Dogs, but Bulldogs have covered the past 2 as 4.5 and 5.5 point underdogs. The later game on Friday night, Dolphins at Suncorp Stadium take on the Melbourne Storm. Both sides coming off big wins last week. Storm beating the Warriors. Now they're 4-1 overall in the season, and Dolphins have definitely found some form, coming off the win against the Panthers, and prior to that beat the Titans. Both those wins were by 18 plus points, so they're definitely playing very well. Storm have won all 3 meetings against the Dolphins, and they come into this matchup $1.22 favorites, minus 12.5, and we have a 48.5 point total. My first look at this game, I'm expecting there to be points. Past 2 between these two sides have gone over. Now, even though the Dolphins are 5-1 favoring the under so far this season, they've scored 30 plus in their past 2. Now, I don't think they're going to score 30 on the Storm, but they could definitely get 16 to 20 points in this game without question. Storm generally give up around 3 tries per game. Their average tries conceded overall in the season is 3.4, points conceded at 18.8. And if Dolphins bring similar attacking form, like they're a little bit lucky to get to the 30 mark last week against the Panthers. Probably the game should have ended at 24-12, but their attack's playing a lot better. Their metrics are moving up. They're now a mid-range attacking side in a lot of the metrics, as opposed to a low side, which they were throughout the first 4 weeks of the season. And then for Melbourne, we know they have plenty of points in them. They scored 36 points in the first 30 minutes last week against the Warriors, who are very similar defensive side to the Dolphins. Dolphins are a little bit better, but there's not a great deal between them across the board. I think the Storm can find 30 points again in this game. They've scored 48 and 42. They've scored 30 plus in 4 of the 5 games they've played. The only miss against the Dragons in wet conditions when they were without Jerome Hughes. Expect Storm to win. I think we'll see plenty of points in this game. And wouldn't surprise me for the Dolphins to show a little bit of fight and start well, but I think Storm will run out winners in the end. Then we have the Warriors versus Broncos. So on Saturday over in New Zealand, Broncos $1.38, $1.40 favourites here, minus 8.5 on the spread. Coming off the loss last week against the Roosters, a game they were heavily favoured to win. It's not as big of a spread this time around. Last time they played over in New Zealand was round 17 last season, and the Warriors were 3.5 point favourites and won that game 32-16. So I think there is a touch of value with the Warriors. Like, if you remove the game last week against the Melbourne Storm, Warriors were going very, very well. They have won both their games at home, beating the Seagulls and the Roosters. Now they are back at home, and definitely a chance of winning this game. Wouldn't be surprised at all. Broncos definitely weren't out their best last week against the Roosters. Now need to travel. That was their 4th straight game at home, so they haven't traveled since round 2, which was against the Raiders, where they lost that game 32-22. I wouldn't be surprised if Warriors keep this close. You could look at try bet either side to win by 1-10, 1-12. instead of taking the Warriors at the plus 8.5, but I think it's going to be a close game. The teams have split the past 6 meetings. Warriors have won and covered 3 of the past 4 at home versus the Broncos. So yeah, that's how I'm looking at it from a side perspective. The past 3 between these two sides have gone over, but if you zoom out, 6 of the past 9 head-to-head have gone under. As much as the Broncos in attack are averaging 30 points a game, 3 of their past 4 games have gone under. And aside from the game against the Roosters and Tigers, where they've scored 46 and 50 points, most of the other games have only got to 26 at most. They've been in that range of 16 to 26 points. So they haven't been absolutely setting the world on fire. And those 2 big games against the Tigers and Roosters are definitely pushing that average right the way up. And at 46.5, these teams with a history of going under, Warriors should have a concerted effort defensively, especially early on, considering how that game last week against the Storm started, where they just couldn't defend at all. I think that'll be a focus for them, especially in the first half in this game. So I like it to be low scoring, especially early on in the game. Then the second and final game on Saturday night, the Roosters versus Panthers. Panthers looking to avoid losing 6 straight. Roosters got back on track after losing to the Rabbitohs. They beat the Broncos last week. Penrith, 3.5 point favorites, $1.68 on the money line, and we have a 46.5 point total for this game. Penrith have won 10 of the past 11 versus the Roosters, but these sides only met in round 2, which wasn't that long ago at all, and the Roosters broke that 10-game winning streak for the Panthers against them, winning 38-32. It was like an absolute shootout. Since that game, Panthers pretty much have really struggled to score in their matches. They scored 24 against the Storm the following week, but since then have failed to score over 18 points. So that matchup earlier on in the season, there was 70 points scored there. These sides, currently the Roosters rank 15th in points for, averaging 18.3 a game, and the Panthers ranked 9th in points for, averaging 22 a game. Both these sides below average attacking sides, however, are both in the bottom 3 defensively. Roosters conceding 27 a game, Panthers conceding 28.3 a game. The pieces are definitely there to see another shootout. Panthers have conceded 22 plus in all 6 of their games so far this season. And Roosters in attack definitely looked a lot better last week in that game against the Broncos than they did the 3 weeks prior against the Warriors, Titans, and Rabbitohs. I think Roosters they are definitely a shot at winning this game. Panthers have a lot of issues. Like, they don't just have issues in defense, which is like a complete polar opposites of what we've seen from them for the past 5 years, but there's also issues in attack. I want to look at the Panthers. Last week they played the Dolphins, who ranked 8th defensively going into that matchup in terms of points against. Panthers scored 12 points. The early try to Casey McLean and then Mose Leota try was very lucky, probably shouldn't have happened. They scored 18 against the Cowboys, who ranked 15th defensively going into that game. They scored 18 against the Rabbitohs, who ranked 9th defensively going into that game. So they've played 3 poor defensive sides over the past 3 weeks and have failed to score over 18 points. If the Roosters can somewhat play good defense, which they have done the past 2 weeks, they've definitely improved, only conceding 20 and 16 their past 2 against the Rabbitohs and Broncos, then Roosters can definitely win this game. I'm a little bit undecided on the total. I think like just the way these sides leak points, we'll see a high scoring game, which will go very close to going over that 46.5 point number. Roosters, their last 4 have gone under though, and Panthers, their last 3 games have gone under. So we've seen a trend of both of these sides heavily favoring low scoring matches. But just the way they like to play each other, as we saw earlier in the season, it turns into a bit of a shootout. At a 46.5 point number, I'd be leaning towards the over. And I definitely give the Roosters a shot at winning this game. I think the market is still slightly favoring the Panthers more than it probably should. On to the first game on Sunday, the Titans back at home against the Raiders. Canberra, 1.5 point favourites, $1.78. 51.5 points is the current total points betting line. Raiders are the better attack and defensive side, so I absolutely agree with them being favourite, and I'm not sure exactly why they aren't bigger favourites than they currently are. Titans have been terrible their past 2 games. They've conceded 36 and 38 against the Dolphins and also the Dragons. Two sides that, in terms of points for, Dolphins ranked 16th going into that matchup, and the Dragons ranked 12th in points for. The fact they've conceded that many points against those kind of sides worries me going against the Raiders, who rank 3rd in points for, 3rd in first half points for, 3rd in meters per point. All really, really good metrics for this matchup. There's a couple of good ins for the Titans, but I'll discuss that more in the betting preview in the Best Bets membership. But I'd like the Raiders to get the job done here. Their most recent matchup at Seabus, Canberra won 36-24. That was round 2022. Last season, they only had the one game, which was down in Canberra in round 6. Canberra won 21-20. And the season prior, Canberra won that game 26-22. So their recent matchups have been fairly close, but Canberra are playing very well. They do need to handle the trip back from Darwin, but that game against Parramatta was virtually a training run for them. They didn't have to do a great deal to win that game, and it probably would have just, more than anything, got their confidence up. Back-to-back road games is a slight concern, but I think they can handle it. It's not like Canberra side that, similar to like your Newcastles and those kind of things, teams that are used to traveling every second week, compared to sides that play all and around, like the Sydney area, where they can go 3, 4, 5 games without having to travel very, very far at all. Before Canberra going into this game, they're coming off that big win last week. They've 4-2 overall in the season. It definitely would help them tremendously if they can grab a win here as well. They got the Dolphins and Storm and Bulldogs following this. So if they can pick up a win here against the Titans and maybe grab a win against the Dolphins the following week, that sets them up really well for those 2 games against the Storm and Bulldogs following that. From a total perspective, with the number at 51.5, they're definitely expecting points in this game, which I do agree with. Titans have been leaking points a lot. 3 of the past 4 between these two sides have gone over. Raiders defensively are only a mid-range defensive side, and I think Titans will find some points. They'll score in that 16 to 24 kind of range at most. Can't see them going too much over that, especially with how they've been going the past couple of weeks. They haven't scored over 16 against the Dolphins and Dragons, who are similar defensive sides to the Raiders when you purely look at the statistics. I think they'll be in that range, but Raiders will find more points, which will get them the win. That's how I'm looking at the first game on Sunday, and then the later game on Sunday. Knights at home again this week against the Sharks, who are returning from Perth. Sharks get an extra day's rest going into this, however, are traveling back, and this will be their 3rd game on the road, which definitely isn't ideal for Cronulla, but an important game for them to go 4-3 overall on the season. The Sharks, their past 5 games have gone under in this matchup. 5 of the past 6 head-to-head against the Knights have gone under. Knights also, all their games this season have gone under the total line, so 5-0 favouring the under. We'll get to the odds. Sharks are favourites, $1.38, minus 8.5, and the line is 43.5, so you can see they've given us a very low number to deal with here. I'd be surprised if it still goes over. The only way this number goes over is if the Sharks attack just absolutely clicks, but there's not a great deal of signs for that, and the Knights just don't give up hardly any line breaks at all. So I think the Sharks will... It's not a game where... I'd be surprised, I should say, if everything just went perfectly for the Sharks. Should do enough to win this game. I don't think they'll drop it against a side who can't score points, especially in first halves. Sharks will have the lead at halftime, and their second halves have been a bit of an issue this year, but against the Knights, they should be able to sort it out. Can't see Newcastle scoring enough points against the Sharks side for them to win the game. Sharks have won 4 of the past 5 versus the Knights. 4 of the past 5 head-to-head have been decided by 18 plus points. Last season, they met in round 24. The Sharks won by 1 point, as exactly the same odds as they are for this game. 8.5 point favourites. The game prior, which was in round 26 in 2023, Knights won at home 32-6. But even though the Sharks lost that game in Newcastle, this is a game I think they will definitely be winning and would be looking at it as being a low-scoring game based on how these sides are traveling at the moment. And then final game of the round on Monday, Tigers versus Eels. And Tigers go into this game at $1.38 favourites. They are minus 8.5. And the total is 47.5. Tigers 3-3 on the season, going pretty well. The question you have to ask yourself for this game is how much has the Lachlan Galvin saga this week affected their preparation for this game? I think no matter what, it's definitely been a distraction for sure. But luckily for the Tigers, they are playing the Eels, so it's definitely still a winnable game for them. The sides met back in round 2. The Tigers won 32 points to 6. If you remember, this was a game where there was very little points early on. Tigers got a run on just before halftime and then ran away with it in the second half. The Tigers have now won 2 of the past 3 versus Parramatta. They've covered 5 of the past 6. I think they get over the line, but I don't think there's a great deal of value in them, that's for sure. Especially when you consider that Mitchell Moses comes back into the team for the Eels. That should help them find some points and keep this game definitely competitive. Probably at the moment, I'm likely to stay away from the sides. The best betting angle, I think, in this game is looking at the total. So 11 of the past 14 between these sides have gone over. And also Tigers, so the past 5 weeks, the Tigers have scored 20 plus points in all 5 of those games, and most of those games were 24 plus. But also what I'm looking at here is that they've scored 20 plus in their past 3 against the Warriors, Broncos, and Knights. Those 3 sides all rank top 6 defensively. Now they're facing the Eels, who rank last and are conceding 33.7 points, coming back from a hot game in Darwin where they are blown out and conceded 50. Tigers should, if the Tigers show up here, they'll find 24 to 30 points in this game comfortably, maybe even slightly more. And I think the Eels can go with them. Last season in round 27, the Eels put 60 on the Tigers. Now, Tigers are definitely defending a lot better this season, that's for sure. But teams have found ways to score against them. The Warriors and Broncos scored 26 and 46. Whilst they're better attacking sides than the Eels, I think Moses coming back in will definitely make a big impact on the Eels' attack. So I can see them scoring more. And also, Tigers, 3 of their past 4 games this season have gone over. Parramatta, 2 and 4 in favour of the under. However, their last matchup, obviously against the Raiders, went over. The game prior against the Dragons had 45 points, which is very similar to what the total line is in this game. So they have been being involved in higher scoring games recently. It's just the game against the Bulldogs that was very low scoring of all their games so far this season. But I'd like it to go over and be a high scoring game to close out the round on Monday. So that's my early thoughts on round number 7. I post all my final bets in the NRL Best Bets membership, plus additional previews where we break down the games more in depth, look at the matchups, look at where teams' strengths and weaknesses are and what the exact bets are and why I'm personally betting them. Plus, you can use all the Bet Finder tools for the NRL to study games, study the betting records, and give yourself the edge with the information that's not readily available. Everything that I use here is all based off my own database from keeping track of every game since 2014 when I really started keeping records in the NRL, because there was such little valuable information available online even back then, which is very similar to the case now. And we can analyze these games in a lot more in depth with this information. So definitely check it out. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the try score video. That'll be coming up soon, where I'll go through all the players I have shortlisted as try scorers for the upcoming round.